This is Johnny Blue Star. Welcome to Threshold, a global media event. A lawyer now turned novelist, Kenneth Eade has freed himself sufficiently to focus on his main task, to create fiction that is both dramatic and powerful, but also dealing with issues that impact harsh American and global political realities. Our show focuses on the Involuntary Spy, the first book in Eade's Espionage Thriller Series, and scientist Seth Rogan's efforts to expose a massive conspiracy to hide the truth of GMOs' effect on the well-being of the people of planet Earth. Join us as we take a peek at this important suspense novelist's mind, as we unthread the deadly promise of GMOs in the real corrupt political and commercial economic system of today. Find out why Eade has his protagonist Seth Rogan risk his lucrative profession, his citizenship, and his life to expose the company hiding behind the distortions of media and corrupt government officials. To Threshold, a global media event. Is the universe just a random dance of atoms, or is it a manifestation of a supremely intelligent architect? Can its purpose, or our purpose here on Earth, be adequately assessed? Can we commune with it, know its intentions, cooperate with its direction? Here, we define threshold as a gateway state of awareness, allowing mankind to cross into a place of real cognition. Threshold allows us to approach questions of higher reality through the door of experience, rather than mere belief. Welcome to Threshold, where we tear away the veil from commercial media, bringing our audience and participants into another realm of reality and enhanced communication. Welcome back to Threshold Radio. This is Johnny Blue Star. Before we begin, I'd like to say a few things about what we're doing here. Unlike a few programs that I follow fairly closely whenever possible, although we are personally interested in all kinds of phenomena, we cover things like attacks on our constitutional rights, theories of manifestation, political cover-ups, the possibility of extraterrestrial contact, and other, shall we say, somewhat sensational topics. They are interesting, but only insofar as they serve our primary goal: to help awaken a sleeping planet. Many of these topics are actually relevant to that goal, because they deal with events and ideas largely ignored by major media, but have a fundamental connection to the human experience. They are often concerns that indicate what we need to do to retake our planet and create a foundation for true human rights, prosperity, and empowerment of the good people of this world. In my opinion, awakening is a state of consciousness, of an awareness that exists in everyone but is often ignored. I think this awareness, this spiritual awareness, is a foundation for any true resistance to the darkness around us. And without this power, true resistance to evil is largely downsized and usually impermanent. But equally important is the fact that there is no point in acquiring true awareness if one refuses to look carefully around one's world and to realize that what is sometimes promoted as good, tasty, and nurturing can truly be the opposite of what it pretends to be. True spiritual awareness doesn't look away from challenges. This is part of what spirituality is about. Matters of conscience, matters of making things better. One of the shows I listen to and often admire counsels listeners that they are the resistance. Could be. Hopefully so. Certainly if people choose to resist. But what kind of resistance, and how are you aware? And are you aware of everything you need to do? How can you resist something that you don't even know exists, or a danger that you have wrongly downsized in your mind? Mankind is texting while it is driving on a global scale, and is going up a mountain pass with total focus on a computerized phone and forgetting to make the correct turns on a very slippery and dangerous road. There's only one destination with this obsession, and it is the bottom of the mountain. Today's guest has dared to tackle one of the fundamental problems facing every person in this audience: our daily bread. The food supply, the foundations of one of the fundamental things any type of living creature needs in one way or another, Both plants and animals need nutrients to survive, nutrients that can be poisoned, removed, or otherwise negatively influenced by human beings whose fundamental goal is to acquire money and power on a global scale. Novelist, nonfiction author, environmental activist, and attorney Kenneth Eade is back on Threshold. In our first show, we focused on hive collapse disorder based on his nonfiction book Bless the Bees, and the novel The Patriots Act, which focused on the issues of illegal detention, torture, and other human rights issues highlighted by Guantanamo. Speaking of the Guantanamo, apparently the president has just signed a defense bill making it even harder for him to close this reprehensible cousin of Abu Ghraib that has done so much to harm the reputation of the United States. With that said, welcome to the show, Ken.
Thanks, Johnny. It's great to be back on Threshold.
Many years ago, I decided to write action-adventure books and films that had real-world political, ethical, and spiritual ramifications. Two of them are now up in Kindle, Boots in Manhattan and Thriceborn, which tackle questions, respectively, about war, government policy, and the foot soldier, and also the spiritual implications of the story of the fall, treated from a science fiction perspective. My colleague, Kenneth Eade, specializes in presenting issues of enormous political and ethical import, both in nonfiction but also in two powerful novel series, the Brent Marks legal thrillers and the Involuntary Spy political thrillers. I consider this kind of novel, as well as the film genre, very important in awakening people to problems so effectively diffused and sidestepped by mainstream media. Storytelling, as well as other nonfiction books and alternative media, as represented by this and many other programs, addresses the spirit and emotions of people and is a very powerful way to affect change, which I believe in firmly. We very much support Ken's focused efforts and sacrifices to address many critical issues in the very tough work of a commercial publishing marketplace filled with distractions and relatively purposeless fiction. Today's focus is on the very serious issue of GMOs, so ably developed in Ken's novel, The Involuntary Spy, which, like his nonfiction books, Bless the Bees and Save the Monarch Butterfly, takes on the question of GMOs. Whereas the issue of destroying pollinators is critical to planetary survival, the ways GMOs affects humanity itself are profound and many-faceted. Good morning, Ken.
Morning, Johnny.
Okay, before we get into the guts of the novel and the issues of GMOs, we probably have quite a few listeners who have not met you before. So for this reason, tell us a bit how you evolved from a full-time attorney to a prolific author of nonfiction books and also novels. It would seem, speaking of novels, it is a tough task to break into this crowded work of sensational suspense, espionage, and political issues, where so often ethical and true political concerns are obliterated by relatively prurient audience appeal. In other words, unexpurgated sex and violence. Why did you enter into this kind of a genre?
Well, I always wanted to do it, but I guess I was too busy working in my day job to just sit down and write. Being a storyteller, I think it's more important to have something to say rather than just write for entertainment. And I think that people learn more from a story than they do from just reading facts. Our brains are just wired to work in that way. So I sought to create something entertaining that could also expose an important political issue. And it's kind of what I call a combination of fiction and faction.
Well, I think that nonfiction, I want to make a very broad generalization here. Nonfiction kind of increases our intellectual intelligence, the kind of thing that's measured by a Stanford Binet test. But novels and films, this type of thing, can increase our emotional intelligence. They can also diminish it drastically.
Yeah, they can. I choose to increase with mine.
I believe you do, because I'm a supporter of what you do, and that's why I've chosen to talk to you today. But I wanted to focus on one book and one issue. The book I've chosen of yours is The Involuntary Spy, which is about a whistleblower scientist protagonist named Seth Rogan, who takes on a powerful oligarchic company called, in your novel, Germinat. His story not only highlights the problems of GMOs, but the critical issue of whistleblowers, Both he, a fictional character, and Edward Snowden wind up in Russia. But Rogan's situation is much more anonymous than Snowden's and compels him to directly take on his own covert operations, much similar to real espionage activities because of the threat to his life every step of the way. Yet neither Snowden nor fictional Rogan are really spies, although both seemingly face consequences of what we call, what has been called, the Espionage Act. Before we expand on the issue Rogan takes on, can we talk a little about the history of the Espionage Act and the fate of the contemporary whistleblower?
Sure. The Espionage Act is really an ancient bit of legislation enacted by Congress in 1917, shortly after the U.S. entered the First World War. And it was originally intended to prohibit interference with military operations and recruitment and to prevent the support of our enemies in wartime. But it's been used, as it seems, only to charge people for their political ideas. For example, newspaper editor Victor Borger, Socialist Party of America candidate Eugene V. Debs, Watchtower Bible and Tract Society President Joseph Franklin Rutherford, and more recently it's been used against whistleblowers like Daniel Ellsberg, Chelsea Manning, and Edward Snowden. So basically the government wields this act when it wants to keep something secret, and our objective of monitoring government is to make it more transparent so they don't break the law.
Well, it used to be that the Espionage Act, like you were talking about, was purely about espionage, someone spying on behalf of another country. Now somehow, by investigating serious governmental problems, that's a form of espionage? That seems rather problematical. What is the goal of intimidating whistleblowers not to come out, investigating the press with the promise of persecution if the government wants the name of sources, and significantly accelerating the number of classified documents? Why are they doing this? I mean, what are they protecting?
I think their goal is to keep things secret. If you keep things secret, nobody can complain about them, and you can basically do whatever you want. You can break the law, in other words. You can keep people locked up with no charges against them and no right to counsel, and torture them as they did in the case of Guantanamo and CIA black sites around the world. You can spy on people whenever you want and break into their personal email or listen to their phone calls, as Edward Snowden exposed. A transparent government, like I mentioned before, is less likely to break the law, and a secret government can do whatever they want. I think it was Ronald Reagan that said that you've got to keep an eye on the government. Ironically, what's happened has just been the opposite.
Well, I just remember that President Obama promised us that he was going to bring in the most transparent of governments that have been in the recent past. And I guess that just didn't come true. But no, besides whistleblowers like your character Seth Rogan in your book, are there other GMO whistleblowers, like, for instance, Dr. Thierry Vrain, who worked in the industry but changed his mind later?
Well, there have been, and the one that really peeved me was a guy that I used to have a lot of respect for. Bill Nye, the science guy? I actually have.
I've actually been in the same room with him at one point.
Yeah. Well, he's basically an actor, but I thought he's done a lot of good things to educate children on science. But he originally was one of the first ones that came out against GMOs, and then last about 8 or 9 months, he just changed his mind after he met with Monsanto. I don't know what happened to make him change his mind, but I guess we all have reasons for the things we do and the positions we take, and we don't all sacrifice ourselves for our ideals like Chelsea Manning and Edward Snowden. Something happened to change Bill's mind, and I hope it wasn't monetary.
Yeah, well, me too. But of course, I can't speak for what he did or his personal ethics, because I don't know him very well. But it is true that money seems to be speaking quite a bit to people who are in power, both in commerce and in politics, and that is really a shame.
It is.
In your novel, what did Rogan find that was so important that secreting that information could endanger his life?
Well, he learned that the food that the government's been allowing to be put on our tables for the past 20 years was not safe, and that the government actually is in collusion with private industry to keep that information from the people. And he also learned about plans to develop genetically engineered organisms for use in biological warfare. So once he was armed with that information, he really wasn't safe anymore and had to run to a neutral ground.
Ken, we're about to take a break. We're going to lead into a break with a clip from Patricia Welch's 3 CD collection called Dinner, Dessert, and Cocktails with Patricia. This song is called Orange Colored Sky, and let's listen to it.
I was walking along, minding my business, when out of an orange-colored sky, flash, bam, alakazam, wonderful you came by. I was humming the tune, drinking in sunshine, when out of that orange-colored view, flash, bam, alakazam, I gotta look at you. Yeah, one look and I yell timber, watch out for flying glass, 'cause the ceiling fell in and the bottom fell out. I went into a spin and I started to shout, I've been hit, this is it, this is it. I was walking along, minding my business, when love came and hit me in the eye. Flash, bam, alakazam, out of an orange-colored sky.
Boots in Manhattan is a coming-of-age novel by Ray Boylan and Johnny Bluestar. It is about a young Tom Boots Raymond who grows up in New York in the 1940s who was a member of a street gang.
My friends and I were about to start our own game of stickball when Rabbit Lacey, the head of the Rattlers, came up to us and tried to move in on our game. We were called Dwarves, the youngest members of the stupid gang.
Hey, Kevin, I need you to get some gloves and some stuff I left at my place.
No, this is our game.
Hey, are you my good little dwarf or what?
You've been calling me a dwarf since I was 6. We're not your personal slaves, pal.
Hey, what is this? A dwarf rebellion? All right, big guy, we ditched the dwarf thing. We make you guys regular rattlers.
No, it's too late.
He looked at Jay and me. We looked away. Rabbit was now angry, and he pushed Kevin hard with the palms of his hand. Kevin tried to ram him in the stomach, but he stepped aside, throwing Kevin into the curb where he fell to the ground, bleeding profusely at the knee. Still, he managed to get up.
My street.
Kevin shouted at Rabbit, pointing at him with an angry index finger.
Find out more by Googling Boots in Manhattan, a 1940s coming-of-age novel, part 1 of the novel series The Foot Soldier by Ray Boylan and Johnny Bluestar. Google with the words Boots in Manhattan, Ray Johnny Kindle. That's Boots in Manhattan, Ray Johnny Kindle.
Nowadays, if you are a serious business person, just getting assistance from someone with a license and a bit of experience may not be sufficient. In fact, your realtor actually needs to be knowledgeable enough to be one of your top advisors. Whether you're facilitating a giant merger or selling your company, there's a lot at stake besides your finances. There is the future value of your current investment, financial freedom, integrity, and overall reputation. If you need this kind of assistance, Sandra LaFlamme is a real estate expert with the experience, reputation, and knowledge qualified to assist you in all your key transactions. Sandra LaFlamme, real estate services with integrity and conscience. Contact her today at 888-366-8070. That's Sandra LaFlamme at 888-366-8070. Patricia Welch's 3-CD collection is called Cocktails, Dinner, and Dessert with Patricia. It contains 46 vintage songs by this powerful and versatile singer who I've worked with for years. I am still amazed when I listen to almost every song she has in this collection. You can find it at patriciawelch.com/CD. That's patriciawelch/CD. Now back to work. Hey, Ken, exactly how are GMOs created, and how is altering plants this way produce fundamentally different results from breeding plants of the same species, say?
Well, people have been breeding plants and also breeding animals with the characteristics that they want to develop for many, many years. But GMOs are different because you're taking the genes of a completely different species, like a bacteria or another plant or even an animal gene, and you're splicing it with the genes of the crop that you want to have that particular characteristic. For example, one of the first GMOs was a tomato that was engineered so it wouldn't freeze. And they did that by inserting genes of a fish into the tomato. Okay. Well, I mean, I don't know. I'm worried that someday you might pick up a tomato and it starts talking to you or something, you know? Yeah, well, there's even weirder stuff they've experimented with, which was splicing human genes into pigs, but they came up with some really weird deformations, so that experimentation didn't go on.
What was the name of that novel? Jules Verne, The Island of Dr. Moriarty, was it?
Yeah, The House of Pain. Yeah, The Island of Dr. Moreau.
Oh, Dr. Moreau. Okay, that's it. I made a mistake. Yeah. Well, anyway, that was a very disturbing sort of prophecy, I would say, to what's happening now.
Yeah.
What kind of consequences do we face for this kind of manipulation of nature, like introducing genetic material from such radically different creatures? Mm-hmm. How long is it going to take to learn of some of these long-standing consequences?
Well, the short answer is that scientists don't know how long it's going to take or how bad it's going to get. I mean, evolution has been thousands and millions of years to have things develop, naturally over the process of natural selection. And now, we've changed the game plan. Species don't combine traits with each other, genes with each other. They just don't. So we don't really know how long it's going to take to find out the consequences. They've been on our tables in America for about 20 years. And so what we're going to do is we're going to find out from that experiment. All the American people are the guinea pigs, and the results are being tallied right now. when you change life in this way, there's no telling what's going to happen down the road. There's entire sequences of DNA that they know nothing about, and they're considered extra or useless material, but they've got to be there for a reason, and we'll find out.
Well, I guess we will. I want to say, Ken, that I love your book. I love the way that it integrates some of these really important questions with other things, with adventure and exciting events, but still there's a kind of perfect relationship between the non-fictional references and the reality that this man is facing in a fictional novel. I like this passage that you wrote. It says, this is from a fictional interview of your character, Seth, by Russian Today. It says, "Did you ever see the movie The Fly? Yes. In The Fly, when the scientist tested his teleporter by using himself as the test subject, his genes were spliced with the genes of a fly that was in the teleporter with him, and all kinds of unexpected things began happening to his body, and he eventually turned into a monster. When we splice a gene from an animal or a bacteria into the gene of a plant, we don't really know everything that will happen. Evolution, like you said before, has had millions of years to work with the present species that we know on Earth. Because of the genetic engineering process, which is very new at this moment, the GMO plant we make today could produce toxins or even viruses that we've never seen before. We may never be able to control them. The government says that if the genetically engineered food looks like conventional food, then it is safe. Safe. I don't get that. I don't get that, Ken. How can they? This is true, right? They actually don't force us to test these foods. They just ignore that. Is that right?
No, that's right. They don't require independent testing of foods. They don't require FDA testing of foods. They let the industry submit their own test results, and this is courtesy of Michael Taylor, who's had high positions in the FDA and also Monsanto for the past 20 years, and he's developed the rule that the government uses now, and that's if it's generally recognized as safe, or grass. If it looks like an ear of corn, it tastes like an ear of corn, it's an ear of corn, no matter what it's got inside of it. And that's how they do it.
Well, a lot of the pharmaceutical products also, aren't they basically being tested by the pharmaceutical companies in ways that sort of resemble this type of process?
They are, but they go through a stricter process and trials and things like that. But with GMO foods, they can basically pass anything they want. Yeah, there's no criteria to go through. There's no hoops to jump through. Hardly any.
How do intelligent people, and I think that a lot of people in this government that we have are, I guess you'd call it, have an intellectual intelligence. Why do they have the nerve to take such a superficial perspective on such highly technical things as manipulating genetic material? How can they do it, Ken?
Well, you got to remember, Johnny, the government serves the people who control it, and that's supposed to be us, the voters. But your local congressman, your senator, and even the president answer to industry that's contributed to their PACs and their super PACs. They're all bought and paid for. That's why the FDA is run by ex-employees from Monsanto and their attorneys. And other industries are run in the same manner in our government. We've lost control of it at the local level.
Well, let's go back to your novel. How do you, and its comparison to reality, how do you look at Seth Rogan? Why is he risking so much? Why would whistleblowers take the risks they do, like Edward Snowden again, for instance, who certainly exposed these secret documents with eyes open to the consequences, including his possible imprisonment and even death? Why would people like this take such big risks?
I think they reach a point in their life where they look at what they're doing and they have a crisis over what they're doing to serve their own needs and what they should be doing for the public good. If they're in that kind of position, for example, Seth had a moral crisis. He was a scientist who originally tried to get into this field of genetic modification of food to try to feed the world. That's what the industry claims it's trying to do. And he realized, during the time that he was working for Germinat, that's not what was happening. And he decided to leave behind his cushy job that was highly paid because it wasn't worth contributing to the poisoning of society. And he took a risk. I think that's why they do it.
Yeah. I would say that people like that, I tend to think that's sort of the core aspect of patriotism, which is to defend the ideals of our country against all its enemies. So it's unfortunate that
you look at
we
someone
have to
like Edward Snowden or Chelsea
vigilant.
Manning, and they're being called traitors.
Yeah, it's what is that in 1984? Double speak.
Yeah.
Well, you say the opposite, and the opposite is what you want them to believe. You just right in their face, you say it doesn't matter about manipulating genetic material. Let's just go do it. After all, that's a very nice, nice red tomato or red apple, even though it might have wax on it and some other chemicals to decorate its coloring. Anyway, we're going to take a break now, and then I'm going to ask you some questions about a little bit about your relationship of your own experience to the novels and how that feeds into it. Right now, we're going to play a piece, a little advertisement for my friend Edgar Ahrens, who is one of the most magnificent composers I have ever heard in the field of film and TV. I've worked with Russian composer Edgar Ahrens for quite a few years, building an inventory of songs, many of which feature singer-performer Patricia Welch. We will soon be releasing these songs, components of an album and a musical in progress called Hadley's Castle. When Edgar and I first got together, I was amazed by the brilliance of his musical scores created for movies, TVs, and animations. Here is a sample of the work he did on the Russian TV series, available now on Amazon, called The Secret Agent's Memoir, which had 2 seasons. This score is called Escape and was created for the first season. I am very pleased to say that Bridge of Light Productions, a division of New Galaxy Enterprises, is proud to be the contact point for television and film companies seeking information about this amazing composer's work. If you are in the entertainment business and wish to know more, contact me at johnnybluestar@gmail.com. That's johnnybluestar@gmail.com.
It is the 15th century. El Tesoro de Cielo, a Spanish treasure ship, sends a scouting expedition to a strange island. Golden statues surrounding them prove the enormity of their find. Suddenly, hordes of ghoulish creatures with scaly green flesh and skeletal wings descend upon them from the sky.
What do you think of this, Rufio?
These creatures are fragile, Captain. We can take them with our swords.
They seem supernatural. Who knows what powers they possess?
Fallen angels, weakened by their treason.
My God, are you saying they're Nephilim, the devil's host?
I'm saying, whatever they are, we can take them. Do any of you cowards dare join me?
Up against sharp knife-like nails and hideous fangs, the men's swords rip into slimy green flesh. Though black blood pours copiously from their half-naked bodies, the creatures miraculously persist. Can the crew survive this bloody, cursed battle?
Find out more by Googling The Thrice Born, a new sci-fi supernatural novel by Carlos Lopez Avery and Johnny Bluestar. Google with the words Carlos Johnny Kendall, The Thrice Born. That's Carlos Johnny Kendall, The Thrice Born.
New Galaxy Enterprises is a media company specializing in wide-ranging content like novels, nonfiction books, screenplays, commercial advertising, web content, etc. One of our most esteemed providers is illustrator Robert W. Zalo. I work on all my most important projects like book covers, logos, web design elements with Robert. As an illustrator, he worked on the Ignatz-nominated comic book, The Expert's Guide to Killing Things That Go Bump in the Night. His skills encompass advertising, magazine illustrations, gaming, comic books, TV production, and scenic painting. His clients include Comcast, Adelphia, Haven Talent, ForceWorks, High Octane Theater, Star Creative Advertising. If you wish to contact Robert, go to JohnnyBlueStar.com and let me know. That's JohnnyBlueStar.com. For artist, illustrator Robert Zalo, an essential component of all the work we do. Maybe he can help you too. We're back with author Kenneth Eade. And Ken, you know, one of the interesting things about this novel is that ultimately the character finds safe haven in Russia, which of course makes him somewhat parallel to Snowden. Yet the truth is that unlike a lot of authors who write about fictional places and so forth that they've never visited, Russia is a place you personally know quite well. Tell us a little about how you came about to go there and what it's like now. I'm sure that a novelist is treated a bit differently than a refugee like Seth Rogan. Tell us about your relationship with this country that's so often in the news today. I think it's a really interesting thing that that some of the things that Putin does is so well. It's very it's kind of fascinating, and. It's hard to exactly tell what's going on, but look at this fact that we see things like a broadcasting company in the U.S. like RT with people like Tom Hartman or Larry King as talk show hosts. On the other hand, we see all this stuff going on, them bombing Syria or sending missile sites to be sent near Turkey because a plane shot down. It's a very confusing sort of environment, but still there's something there that's really interesting now.
Well, I've had a long relationship with Russia. It's kind of like my second home because my wife is Russian, and we spend a lot of time here. I'm actually calling you from Russia right now. So I know a lot about the country, and there's a lot of similarities of the Russian people to American people, believe it or not. And I guess there's a lot of differences, but since I've been involved with Russia so long, I've probably lost track of all those differences. But yeah. It's a really interesting country. People are very well read here and very well educated. So being a novelist, I'm pretty well received. I'm kind of a celebrity here, which is nice. And I like Putin. I mean, not all the Russians like him, but I remember when he was the premier of Yeltsin, when everything was all messed up in Russia after the fall of the Soviet Union, and he was the premier for Yeltsin. I saw him on his first public announcement. I said, that guy is going to be the next president of Russia, and sure enough, he was. And I think that we're lucky that he's actually in control, because if it would have been someone like George W. Bush, who had his finger on the nuclear button when that Turkish plane shot down the Russian plane, I'm not sure if we'd be in a very safe position.
Yeah, there's things that are going on. I mean, like giving some refuge to whistleblowers, particularly Snowden, is amazing. And joining. Let's put it this way: independently at this point, perhaps it'll change. Taking initiative to counteract ISIS, I think, is an amazingly important thing. And I know that Russia's interests are involved, but it's actually the world's interests So I'm glad that he's doing that. I think there's an intelligence there that we seem to be lacking sometimes in our foreign policies, especially towards what's obviously a clear threat.
The basic thing is they were invited to come by the government of Syria. That's something that the states didn't think about when they went in their bombing campaign in Syria. They thought, all right, here's another place where we can effect a regime change, and they had no exit plan. They just thought, we'll just wreak havoc and blow the whole place up like they did with Iraq, and then what you've got is opportunity for groups like ISIS to come to life, which is what the Iraq war caused. The opportunity for ISIS to get a stronghold. That opportunity wouldn't have been there without the Iraq war. So I think that if you have a strategy and you're representing a known government, that it's probably a better game plan than just going in haphazard and hacking everything up.
And just to mention this as an aside, although it's actually a fairly big deal, there are these drone strikes that are causing, regardless if the governments allow them in or not, they cause so much damage to civilians that it's almost frightening to imagine that we can just go into a country, and again, sometimes without any permission, sometimes with permission of a certain group in government, but we can just wreak havoc. We are just getting entangled, as you know, as Washington warned us against, in all kinds of things, and not for the right reasons, I'm afraid.
I agree. It's crazy.
Yeah. Here's another passage from your book. When Seth is asked about GMO's possible use in biological warfare, he says, no, it isn't used that way, but it is used in the war on drugs to kill the opium poppy and cocoa plant farms. When questioned, isn't that a good thing? He says, and this is an amazing little passage, it will also kill beneficial plants and wildlife and infect the rainforest where a lot of these drugs are grown. Colombia, for example, is not only known for growing these drugs, but is also the home of rainforests that are called the lungs of the earth because they produce up to 20% of the world's oxygen for our atmosphere. This could have devastating consequences for life on Earth as we know it. Is this true? Is this real?
It's true that they've experimented with engineering organisms to wipe out the opium poppy and the war on drugs and cocaine. But as far as I know, they never have implemented it. Not yet. So it's true, but the repercussions of such an act, if they decide to do it, are exactly accurate as recited in the book. And if it suits their needs, I think they will do it someday.
Yeah, governments tend to experiment with all kinds of things that perhaps, unleash the biological warfare genie. And who knows how much of this has actually been responsible for a lot of some of the medical havoc that we have. I also, to change the subject a bit, I notice a great deal of very specific descriptive writing in your book. For instance, there's a martial arts training when Yuri, Seth's Russian handler, teaches him how to defend himself, the methodology of using special software to hack his boss's computer and the spyware he installs in it, the description of a Russian nightclub and its guests, the description of education in Russian high school. Even more so, there's a lot of research and scientific descriptions, often flavoring conversation, that deals with GMOs. How much of this, as we just were speaking about, in general, how much of this is accurate and how much research do you have to do to create these political and legal thrillers?
It's 100% accurate. In the case of an involuntary spy, I had to do a lot of research on GMOs, so all that research is in the book, and it's all accurate. But on the other things that you mentioned, I like my books to be real. I like for example, when a character disarms another character with a gun or a knife, I go in and study on the internet how that's supposed to be done and how to describe the physical action so that it sounds real to my readers. So not only do I want to be accurate when I'm talking about an issue like GMO, but I want to be accurate right down to the software hacking and all the other stuff. I want it to really be real.
Well, I understand that. As a matter of fact, sometimes you make a sort of transformation in different kinds of fiction. Like when I was writing a science fiction thriller, The Thrice Born, it was dealing with angels, and I wanted to know how angels would fight. So I went to a friend of mine, Robert Zalo, who I work with sometimes as an artist, who developed the martial arts system, and we kind of brainstormed how they would actually fight that it would look real. So,
wow.
Anyway, I think that you are concerned as a novelist to create a reality, and in your genre, it's got to be actually accurate to give the most effect. Now, you say later on, I believe this from your appendix, it was no secret that genetically engineered foods were controversial. So controversial that his company and the other big chemical companies spent millions of dollars on PR campaigns to convince the public that GMOs were the promise to end world hunger and malnutrition. And they would spend millions more to fight labeling to prevent Americans from knowing what they were eating, while their cronies at the USDA and the FDA silently allowed genetically engineered foods to occupy up to 70% of the American table. Europe had already had its coming out when the only independent researcher was able to finally talk to the public about this finding on GMOs. I guess that's from the book itself, right?
Yeah,
I mean, the novel, yes.
Yeah.
How accurate is it? I mean, how much of effort has gone into making this wish to prevent Americans from contesting or to be able to contest the government's lax food policies?
Oh, it's 100% accurate. There's been the industry, millions of the junk food industry and spending to try to prevent labeling. In fact, they've sponsored their own bill in Congress called the Dark Act to try to have the feds take over state labeling, so the states can't force the companies to label their foods. So they just don't want us to know what we're eating. And like I said before, they use the generally recognized as safe standard. And so we're getting corn that has its own insecticides that explode the insides of insect stomachs, or we're getting corn that's been soaked with levels of glyphosate that they never allowed before, that the EPA has increased, so because the EPA is also bought by Monsanto. So it's 100% accurate. They spent millions on a PR campaign to tell us how they're going to feed the world when it's not true, and they spend millions trying to prevent labeling.
Give us some idea from a biochemical standpoint of what's being done to alter food and the resulting negative effect on the human body through genetic engineering. I'm sort of asking about the dark side of the process.
Well, despite the rhetoric of we want to feed the world and we want to feed the hungry, which is really a social political problem, most GMO foods are engineered to survive pesticides. So you can spray a whole farm with their pesticide and kill everything but the crop. And the other ones are engineered to make their own pesticides. As a result, you either get a dangerous bacteria, in the case of BT engineered foods that make their own pesticides, or you get a crop that's been doused in glyphosate, which is a pesticide that the World Health Organization says is cancer causing. So this is the main thrust of the two most common kinds of GMOs, and the negative effect is we're getting doused with an extra amount of cancer-causing pesticides that are sprayed on the food and take up in the tissues, or we're getting foods that have bacteria inside of them that have been proven in studies to breach the digestive system in humans, and they're also causing cancer. Wow.
Listen, we're going to go to a break now. Here's a clip from Patty Greer, a wonderful singer-songwriter who became one of the leading experts on crop circles. Seems appropriate. Patty is now focused on continuing her amazing career as a chronicler of this perplexing and wondrous phenomena. You can see clips of her films and soundtracks at pattygreer.net. That's pattygreer.net. Check out her songs on YouTube. Here's one of them. It's called Are You the One?
seed. Let me be the queen of your life. You want right now. Take me.
The following is from West Side Warrior, the memoir of Ray Boylan, a Korean War veteran and crime fighter. He was there fighting in the world's coldest battlefield when the Chinese communists invaded.
Desperate squad members ran past our foxhole yelling, "Get the hell out of here, there's too many of them." Again, we saw the Chinese soldiers charging in with opium-induced mindlessness, oblivious of our bullets. Again, we heard the bugles and whistles. Climbing out of our foxhole, Bob dropped 2 hand grenades behind us, and I threw one over my shoulder. Bullets whizzing by our heads, Bob and I became bolts of lightning flashing across the mountainside. Like a hideous film, desperate scenes like this played out on the Tokong Pass for 3 days. Sometimes I played in the scene. Sometimes I could only watch and wonder if it were real, or if I'd be suddenly jolted out of my trance by an RKO usher saying, "Hey, did you kids sneak in here?"
To acquire this book, Google westsidewarrior.boylan.kindle. Boylan is spelled Boylan. That's Westside Warrior, Boylan, Kindle.
This is Johnny Bluestar. I've worked as a lyricist with Patricia Welch for over 5 years, along with Russian composer Edgar Ahrens, a friend and colleague. Her ability as a singer is simply amazing. She brings a unique and dramatic flair to every song she sings. Over the next few months, we shall be releasing a number of these songs, part of an album called Hadley's Castle. Meanwhile, Patricia has been busy creating a super enjoyable collection of classic standards in an exciting 46-song, 3-CD collection.
Music for great entertaining introduces Cocktails, Dinner, and Dessert with Patricia Welch. 3 hours of continuous music. 46 of the all-time classic standards, spanning decades of hit songs. Going to a friend's home for dinner? Cocktails, Dinner, and Dessert with Patricia also makes the perfect hostess gift. This 3-CD compilation is the perfect background music that sets just the right mood for any dinner party.
I'm crazy for feeling so lonely. There was a boy, a very strange, enchanted boy.
To purchase this album, just go to patriciawelch.com/CD. That is patriciawelch.com/CD. You won't be disappointed. We're going to go to a break in a few minutes. Just wanted to ask you, Ken, we're going to come back, of course, and discuss in more detail your novel and the reality of GMOs. But just in a short answer, what can we do? What can people actually do to make this happen? I don't mean just in a sort of personal way, but in a way that would actually have some kind of power.
Well, like anything else, you exercise the power of your pocketbook. You don't buy junk food. Don't buy anything in a box, bottle, or can. Buy only organic. It's going to cost you a little bit more in the short run, but it's going to save you a lot of medical problems in the long run. So if you eat organic, if you grow your own, if you've got a garden that you can actually grow some food in, or if you support your local farmers and eat healthier, then we're going to change things, and we're going to lessen our dependence on GMO foods. They're mainly used as animal feed and in junk foods. They're in almost all junk foods. Corn syrup is all GMOs, and basically anything you get in a box, bottle, or can, you got to be careful.
You know, what strikes me is that we always talk about, like writing our congressperson and voting, which hasn't really worked very well since people aren't voting in primaries, and because when you write a letter to your congressman alone, you're largely ignored. But there's also the possibility of making your vote in this direction through, like you say, what you buy. But yes. I think that it will take a rather powerful consciousness on the part of many, many people to not only buy these things because of their own health needs, but also as a way of demonstrating that this is what they want to buy. They don't want to buy this other stuff. Do you think
exactly.
there's enough people
it all
to
comes
make an
with
impact
being
now?
Informed. I mean, most of the people don't know what they're eating. That's the problem. If they knew what they were eating and they knew why their dad had diabetes or their mom is diagnosed with cancer, then it's going to make a difference to them. They're not going to eat that crap anymore.
Well, we're going to go to a break now, and we'll be right back with Kenneth Eade and a discussion of his extremely interesting novel, The Involuntary Spy.
Views and opinions expressed on this program were those of the hosts and guests and did not necessarily reflect those of Vegas All Net Radio, its affiliates, or its parent company.
This is Johnny Blue Star. Welcome to Threshold, a global media event. Is the universe just a random dance of atoms, or is it a manifestation of a supremely intelligent architect? Can its purpose, or our purpose here on Earth, be adequately assessed? Can we commune with it, know its intentions, cooperate with its direction? Here, we define threshold as a gateway state of awareness, allowing mankind to cross into a place of real cognition. Threshold allows us to approach questions of higher reality through the door of experience, rather than mere belief. Welcome to Threshold, where we tear away the veil from commercial media, bringing our audience and participants into another realm of reality and enhanced communication. Welcome back. We are continuing our conversation with Kenneth Eade about his book, The Involuntary Spy, part of a continuing political thriller series. The hero of the book is Seth Rogan, an American geneticist, a scientist who, while working with the world's largest and most powerful company involved with GMOs and a variety of agribusiness products, ranging from seeds to pesticides, discovers certain dangers inherent in the genetic engineering of food crops. Having embarked on his profession with Germinat with the best of faith, he is highly disturbed that the health benefits of this company's GMOs are negligible, but their possibility of causing chaos and destruction in the human body, both in the short and long run, are virtually endless. In his research, he finds a peculiar motivation for much of the GMO projects, a pesticide that the novel calls cleanup. Now, this novelistic contention is not far from a real-world problem connected with a company called Monsanto and a pesticide called Roundup. Can you explain this real-world problem, Ken, and compare it somewhat to the problem Seth finds with cleanup?
Sure. The real-world problem that you're speaking about is that most of GMO products that are made nowadays are products that are called Roundup-ready foods, which means they're resistant to Monsanto's herbicide Roundup, which is the primary ingredient in Roundup is called glyphosate, and that's a chemical that Monsanto originally designed to kill weeds. It was discovered in the 1970s. It was a highly effective herbicide, and in fact, it's the most widely used herbicide in the world. Now, since Monsanto's patent was nearing its end, it needed to engineer crops that were resistant to glyphosate to continue its monopoly on the herbicide market, and that's exactly what they did. Glyphosate will kill everything on a farm except for the crop that's particularly planted there, which means it kills all the weeds that may be beneficial to the ecosystem, including milkweed, which is the primary source of food for the monarch butterfly. And in the humans, when we ingest glyphosate, it kills our gut flora, and it also causes cancer.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. Well, you know, about one other aspect of this thing, it's not just the food industry, but it's the cover-up that different industries use. How does the so-called real-world revolving door between government and food industry work? Well, it works like this. The food industry is governed by the
by the USDA and the FDA. And the people that serve on the government's agencies, particularly the FDA, are the same people that also worked for the industry. It's called the revolving door. They go from Monsanto or another big industry, chemical agricultural industry, into the FDA and back and forth. And the most glaring example of this is Michael Taylor. Taylor worked for the FDA from 76 to 81, and then he went into private practice at a law firm that represented Monsanto, and then he returned to the FDA in 1991. Then between 1994 and 1996, he went to the USDA and acted as administrator of the Food Safety and Inspection Service, and now he's the deputy FDA commissioner appointed by President Obama in 2010. He's been appointed to be the deputy commissioner of foods. So he's basically had control over food policy since let's say 80, since the 80s.
Wow. You know, Eisenhower warned us against the military-industrial complex. I think now if a president cared to and would actually warn us, which I know will not happen in the near future, he would warn us against the industrial corporate complex, because that industrial corporate complex is killing and disturbing and destroying so much of our culture and the bright things in our country, and disturbing the health and well-being of so many people throughout the world.
It is, and if you look at the sequel to An Involuntary Spy, which is To Russia for Love, you can see how the industrial corporate complex and the military industrial complex go hand in hand in a place like Ukraine, where they go into with military power and political power to try to get an economic advantage for industry.
You see, the problem is I see is that so much of all these incursions, even ones that involve very seriously bad people like Saddam Hussein, are motivated by economic reasons. And so there's a distortion process that goes in there with the military that eventually produces chaos and pain for many, many people, including the brave soldiers who fight for us, who are I think that most of these people who are in our military and also in the police are really patriotic, good people, but they are also somewhat victimized by the people who are controlling what they do.
They're definitely victims.
And the consequence, I mean, and then they come back and they're not taken care of. You know, these wonderful people, and so. I think that I've spoke to many veterans who feel like that in many senses they've been compromised because the mission that they've been given has not been fully stated. Let's turn the subject for a second.
I'm sorry. They're doing. I mean, they're supposed to be protecting democracy or protecting, from an insurgency, and they find out that they're dying just so people can make money. Yeah,
they're expanding a corporate empire. And
exactly.
That is really quite the opposite of what the founding fathers wanted, but it's also the opposite. I think there was an American dream that was sort of planted by Jefferson and the founding fathers, but it was expanded greatly over the decades and centuries. And we finally got somewhere where we really had possibly a vibrant democracy that would be support minorities and women, and it would support different ethnic groups. And it was a really robust answer to that seed that was first planted, and now it's being strangled, just like our actual food supply is being strangled by the same motivations that take us into these unfortunate wars.
I agree.
Yeah. One of the products you described in the novel is called BT corn, but BT corn actually exists as a real world product. But this is what you say in the novel: to engineer BT corn, the gene known to produce the BT toxin, is forcibly inserted into the DNA of corn randomly. Both the location of the transferred gene sequence in the corn DNA and the consequences of the insertion differ with each insertion. The plant cells that have taken up the inserted gene are then grown in a lab using tissue culture and or a nutrient medium that allows them to develop the plants that are used to grow GM food products. BT corn was a form of corn that was genetically modified to produce its own toxin that would kill insects, primarily targeted at the European corn borer, an insect that was an enemy of corn farmers. The same technology was used for cotton. The corn was engineered using a gene found in the soil bacteria, Bacillus thuringiensis, thus the name BT. When the gene was fused with the DNA of the corn actually made its own insecticide. When insecticides ate any part of the corn plant, the toxic proteins produced by the BT gene would penetrate the linings of their stomach, and they would quickly die. One of the interesting things, that was a passage from your novel about the book, is in the appendix where you break down some of the real-world components about the novel. One of these is the discussion of BT corn. Could you tell us more about the modification of corn, but also soy products, which are fed to animals, and the implications for that in the real world?
Sure. Modified corn and soy is in almost every food product that you buy in a box, bottle, or can, and it's also used in animal feed. In fact, a lot of animal producers and breeders are going back to natural feed because they're getting a weaker animals from it, and also they're having a big infertility problem. The GMO hydrolyzed corn syrup is used in place of sugar in almost everything that's sweetened in America. The American public is being dosed with high levels of glyphosate, antibiotic-resistant material, and potentially dangerous bacteria that nobody has any idea that they're eating. As a result, we've got an increase in diabetes, we've got an increase in cancer that's incomparable to any other society in the world. So we are, as I told you before, the world's guinea pigs for this huge experiment.
Wow. Look, I want to ask you, is there another side to this process? Is there a brighter possibility? You talk about a fictional alternative process that Seth has been playing with while he's still at Germanet. I'm going to quote from the novel. Seth was, however, working on a project he really believed in. It was called Miracle Rice. Miracle Rice was created by inserting a gene that produced beta-carotene into the plant's DNA, which was hoped to solve one of the essential problems of malnutrition in young people in underdeveloped countries, vitamin A deficiency, which caused blindness. The main problem was engineering enough beta-carotene in the plant. As it stood, you would have to eat 20 pounds of Miracle Rice every day to get the minimum required amount of vitamin A, something that was better imparted by supplements or even carrots. But Seth vowed not to give up. Is that a real... Are there really good things that can come out of this genetic manipulation?
There could be, like anything else, but but right now there aren't anything good that can come out of it. In fact, this Miracle Rice is actually not a fictional product. There's a product called Golden Rice that claims to satisfy vitamin A deficiencies by combining rice with a gene from a dandelion that produces beta-carotene. But as in my fictional Miracle Rice, a 4-year-old child would have to eat 27 bowls of rice per day to get the daily minimum recommended amount of vitamin A. So basically they should stick to growing carrots.
Yeah, I think our kids would be even in worse shape in terms of obesity if they ate 27 bowls. But you never know.
I think so too.
There's all kinds of possibilities out there for expanding the bad foods that we eat. So maybe we should think about the possibilities. Well, anyway, we're going to take a break now, and when I think of the following songs by Stephanie Slevin, I think of some of those irresponsible companies and so-called political leaders, what they're doing to the earth. Still, I try to send them love. But here's a song by Stephanie called What You Have Done. She's a UK singer-songwriter, which you can find at Reverb Nation.
what you have done to this little child of mine. Look what you have done, for your darkness has gone blind. You broke and starved her body, and I freed you from your sin. But look what you've done to this child of mine, 'cause you let the darkness in. You cannot be saved, for I gave you a last chance. But you chose the path to darkness, and you did the devil's dance. Oh, look what you have done to this little child of mine. Look what you have done, for your darkness has gone blind. Forever in her sorrow, her happiness a show. Little broken girl that nobody wants to know. And I did always love her since the age of birth, but she could not feel my love, for she felt she had no worth. Oh, look what you have done to this little child of mine. Look what you have done, for your darkness has gone blind. And you can see her torment as she cries out in the rain. And I can feel her pain as she always calls my name.
It is the 15th century. El Tesoro de Cielo, a Spanish treasure ship, sends a scouting expedition to a strange island. Golden statues surrounding them prove the enormity of their find. Suddenly, hordes of ghoulish creatures with scaly green flesh and skeletal wings descend upon them from the sky.
What do you think of this, Rufio?
These creatures are fragile, Captain. We can take them with our swords.
They seem supernatural. Who knows what powers they possess?
Fallen angels, weakened by their treason.
My God, are you saying they're Nephilim, the devil's host?
I'm saying whatever they are, we can take them. Do any of you cowards dare join me?
Up against sharp knife-like nails and hideous fangs, the men's swords rip into slimy green flesh. Though black blood pours copiously from their half-naked bodies, creatures miraculously persist. Can the crew survive this bloody, cursed battle?
Find out more by Googling The Thrice Born, a new sci-fi supernatural novel by Carlos Lopez Avery and Johnny Bluestar. Google with the words Carlos Johnny Kindle, The Thrice Born. That's Carlos Johnny Kindle, The Thrice Born.
This is Johnny Bluestar. I've worked as a lyricist with Patricia Welch for over 5 years, along with Russian composer Edgar Ahrens, a friend and colleague. Her ability as a singer is simply amazing. She brings a unique and dramatic flair to every song she sings. Over the next few months, we shall be releasing a number of these songs, part of an album called Hadley's Castle. Meanwhile, Patricia has been busy creating a super enjoyable collection of classic standards in an exciting 46-song, 3-CD collection.
Music for great entertaining introduces Cocktails, Dinner, and Dessert with Patricia Welch. 3 hours of continuous music. 46 of the all-time classic standards, spanning decades of hit songs. Going to a friend's home for dinner? Cocktails, Dinner, and Dessert with Patricia also makes the perfect hostess gift. This 3-CD compilation is the perfect background music that sets just the right mood for any dinner party.
I'm crazy for feeling so lonely. There was a boy, a very strange
purchase this album, just go to patriciawelch.com/CD. That is patriciawelch.com/CD. You won't be disappointed. In the Involuntary Spy novel, you mentioned two concerns Seth has about the ingestion of GMO foods. One of these is the possibility that these foods could cause resistance to common antibiotic products. How does this actually happen, sort of from a biochemical, biological point of view?
Well, what they do is they shoot the genes into the plants, the genes that they want to have the trait into the plants. But in the Petri dish, they don't really know which genes have taken or not, so they add to them an antibiotic-resistant marker. And so this allows them to douse the Petri dish after they've shot the gene gun on it, and with antibiotics, and whatever doesn't die is basically antibiotic resistant, and that's the crop the tissue that survives. So it's postulated that this process creates antibiotic resistance in humans as well as increased allergic reactions. That was what his concern was about.
Wow. Well, you know, we had Dr. Hugo Rodier here, a physician in Utah, talking quite a bit about autoimmune disease and the relationship with leaky gut. Could you explain something about leaky gut and its relationship to GMO products and other
Sure.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, leaky gut is basically a condition where your digestive system's microbiome is not in balance with the natural flora that it needs to be in there. In other words, you need good bacteria in your digestive system in order to digest. And if you don't, then you can't digest properly, and you get all kinds of problems, leaky gut being one of them. And GMO ingestion is like I said before, one of the main products of GMO is Roundup Ready products, which increase the use of glyphosate in our system because we're getting more glyphosate that's been sprayed on the crops. We're getting it in our guts, and it's killing our good flora and the bacteria that we actually need for you to digest your food, and throwing our microbiome completely out of whack. So this is one of the contributions that GMO is making to leaky gut.
Well, I think one of the problems with leaky gut is that certain even good food substances will get into will get through a porous leaking intestine, get into the bloodstream, and it is attacked by our immune systems, which these T cells think that it's some kind of enemy, and
Exactly.
So people have these terrible allergic reactions and all kinds of responses.
Exactly. There's a great book, actually, Johnny, that you can get. It's written by a doctor, and it's called The Microbiome Diet, and it shows you how to put what to eat and what not to eat to put your system back in place if you're suffering from leaky gut or if you think you are.
Well, that's good information. I hadn't heard about that book.
It's a great book. I used it myself.
Well, another problem that Seth in the novel is concerned about in his experiments to test BT corn, he's finding that his, quote, test subjects were coming up with elements of neonicotinoid pesticides. Is there such a problem in the real world, and what are the dangers involved if there is?
There is. Neonicotinoid pesticides are not only used in BT crops, but in fact every BT crop is treated with neonicotinoid pesticides. They treat the seeds themselves, and once the seed is treated, it takes up residence in every tissue of the plant, including the pollen and the nectar, which is partly responsible for the demise of the bees that we talked about in the last show.
Wow.
So these are very potent insecticides that also, since they're in every tissue, they also get into the roots, which will contaminate the soil for about 20 years, even after they've been eliminated. So if you've got a Bt product that's been planted in a farmer's field, and they decide, oh no, we want to go organic, well, it's still going to be contaminated by the neonicotinoid pesticides for 20 years. It's kind of like radiation.
Wow. Well, what are the, just to review like our last show, what is the status now of bee colony collapse? And what is this longevity of these pesticides? How is that going to help?
Well, it's really there's really not one particular reason that's been cited for colony collapse disorder, but one of the main factors is the use of pesticides, and the neonicotinoid pesticides have been targeted as one of the worst culprits. The problem is that the EPA has provisionally approved a lot of these pesticides in the states, which means that they were allowed to go ahead and make them commercially available without having to fully test them, and they were supposed to come back with results later. Well, that didn't happen. And now there's been a couple that have been, because of activism, a couple of new products that have been tried to be put on the market that have been blocked, but there's still a lot out there, and basically we have to work with our pocketbooks again and not buy products that have been treated in neonicotinoid pesticides, especially if you're your own gardener. Don't buy seeds that are treated with this stuff.
Well, to continue on, I think one of the most fascinating characters in the Involuntary Spy is Yuri, Seth's Russian handler for the Russian government, whose job is allegedly to protect Seth. Yuri seems practical and knowledgeable about his job, but on the other hand, he turns out to be more of a mercenary than a help. In other words, he conceives of himself as loyal to whoever pays him the highest. Somehow, I think if we have a psychological pandemic going on in the world of geopolitics, it's something like this. Yuri seems to be one of the thousands of victims whose loyalty to the highest bidder is as fragile as his commitment to the well-being of his fellow human beings. How do you understand this psychology, Ken? And do you agree that this money virus seems to have infected many of our political leaders around the globe, including perhaps the majority of our leaders in Congress, who are allowing lax regulatory practices in many different industries, including the financial industry, which might be leading the U.S. into a dollar apocalypse, and pharmaceutical companies which are putting a Band-Aid on various ailments caused by our food industry. And there's so much more. The beat goes on. What do you think?
Oh, yeah, I definitely agree that most of our congressmen and women are all Yuri types. They're supposed to answer to us, the voters, but instead they answer to whoever pays the largest political contributions. I think it's human nature to pay more attention to your own personal bottom line than what's good for everyone else, but it's very dangerous when it comes to the people who are supposed to be serving the public, when they're taking their own personal economic bottom line and putting it ahead of what's good for the voters. I think we have to take the profit out of politics. And I think we should do that by enacting legislation that reduces the amount that we're allowed to contribute. For example, Bernie Sanders is not taking any PAC or Super PAC money. He's taking it all from regular people. I think that should be commended. It sets a good example for other politicians.
Yeah, I think that basically either you have the government itself funding the process, public elections, or there's some kind of cap, really serious cap, where people can't be bought. And maybe you have to also have some more deeper legislation about this revolving door stuff. Very dangerous.
There's got to be limits on contributions, first of all, and I think there's got to be term limits, because a lot of these people get in there for 20, 30 years, and that allows them to, buddy with all the industry and basically get into a really high power, and they're basically bought.
Yeah, it's a shame to think that that's what we're up against, but I guess that's the case.
I think so.
Yeah. So anyway, another problem. One of the results in Seth's experiments is infertility, allegedly because of the ingestion of the animals taking GM soy. Has there been any indication of damage to reproductive systems by GMO products?
Well, since most GMO studies are funded by the industry that promotes the GMO, we don't have very many studies on the subject. And the industry also contributes to most of the academic research, so it's hard to find independent studies, but the few that have been done have indicated infertility in animals such as pigs who ingest GMO feed and shrunken reproductive organs in rats that have been experimented on. And a lot, like I mentioned before, a lot of farmers who have suffered from infertility problems with their animals that they're breeding have gone back to natural food.
Yeah, like that's really important to it's just like, I mean, what part of the body aren't they tampering with? It's really hard to guess. So
it's hard to guess, and sometimes for a lot of things, there's so many unknowns. There's, we are only beginning to see the effects of GMOs on, allergies. People who have food sensitivities are increased now, increase in cancer, and especially increase in obesity and diabetes.
Yeah, it is a shame. We're going to go to a break now, and we're going to play something by Edgar Ahrens.
The following is from West Side Warrior, the memoir of Ray Boylan, a Korean War veteran and crime fighter. He was there fighting in the world's coldest battlefield when the Chinese communists invaded.
Desperate squad members ran past our foxhole yelling, "Get the hell out of here, there's too many of them!" Again, we saw the Chinese soldiers charging in with opium-induced mindlessness, oblivious of our bullets. Again, we heard the bugles and whistles. Climbing out of our foxhole, Bob dropped 2 hand grenades behind us, and I threw one over my shoulder. Bullets whizzing by our heads, Bob and I became bolts of lightning flashing across the mountainside. Like a hideous film, desperate scenes like this played out on the Tokong Pass for 3 days. Sometimes I played in the scene. Sometimes I could only watch and wonder if it were real, or if I'd be suddenly jolted out of my trance by an RKO usher saying, "Hey, did you kids sneak in here?"
To acquire this book, Google westsidewarrior.boylan.kindle. Boylan is spelled Boylan. That's West Side Warrior, Boylan, Kindle.
Nowadays, if you are a serious business person, just getting assistance from someone with a license and a bit of experience may not be sufficient. In fact, your realtor actually needs to be knowledgeable enough to be one of your top advisors. Whether you are facilitating a giant merger or selling your company, there's a lot at stake besides your finances. There is the future value of your current investment, financial freedom, integrity, and overall reputation. If you need this kind of assistance, Sandra LaFlamme is a real estate expert with the experience, reputation, and knowledge qualified to assist you in all your key transactions. Sandra LaFlamme, real estate services with integrity and conscience. Contact her today at 888-366-8070. That's Sandra LaFlamme at 888-366-8070. At what point in your novel, The Involuntary Spy, when Seth is caught, his former lab assistant and girlfriend basically refuses to interact with him again? She presumably has been threatened, as Seth is threatened at the end of the novel, to the point that he may be soon terminated by a number of parties including Uri, it seems that the murder or threat of murders are not beyond the reach of those involved in all kinds of government cover-ups, including the assassination of presidents, the protection of government secrets, as well as the protection of the private excesses and commercial illegalities of those involved in government. Is the real world of cover-ups and threats as potent in the real world as in your novel?
Well, of course, I don't have any personal knowledge of that, but in the novel, the threat of murder is really real. While we don't see that in life, we do see through exposure such as WikiLeaks that the CIA has got assassin teams. The CIA has been using torture, and like you mentioned before, the use of drone strikes. We see that in real life. So I think that from all this evidence, we can infer that murder is alive and well behind the scenes, and it's being used by our government whenever they need to use it.
One of the experiments that Seth does shows that the Bt toxin seems to create erratic cell growth in the lower part of the small intestine. I guess that's in rats. Is there any concern that GMO products could facilitate cancer?
There is. There's studies that the Bt toxin has breached the ileum, which is the bottom part of the small intestine where it empties into the colon. There's been studies where Bt has been found in the bloodstream of babies whose mothers have ingested the GMO products, and the World Health Organization, as I mentioned before, has determined that glyphosate probably causes cancer. So all of the GMOs, which are the Roundup Ready GMOs, are not cancerous per se because of their own chemical constitution, but they're soaked with high levels of glyphosate, which causes cancer. And by ingesting those GMO products, we're getting the glyphosate, and it's causing a cancer problem.
Yeah, we've just been talking about murder on individual levels, but there's also, when you create very bad food products, or very bad products in general, that people ingest or use in different ways, and you know that they're going to be hurt or killed, that is kind of a really serious thing. Anyway,
don't worry, Johnny. We've got the pharmaceutical industry, which will help cure all those people who get the cancer and the diabetes from ingesting GMO food.
Well, good luck for that.
Yep.
The United States has obviously been lax in letting the DNA cat out of the bag, and losing GMO products in the United States and the world without any kind of real scientific oversight, except those involved in producing GMOs. And as I mentioned before, I think in certain ways this is parallel to other industries. What other countries have other countries done to protect their citizens from GMOs, for instance, in the European Union, in China, in India, or Russia?
Well, the European Union has legislation right now that is against the current development of GMOs, but it leaves regulation up to the independent states. So what you've got is every country in Europe except for Spain, Poland, and the Czech Republic doesn't allow them. But in those three countries, they are allowed. They're currently banned in Russia until they can be proven safe, which Russia doesn't feel they are safe at this point. So until they can be proven safe, they're banned in Russia, of all places. But China basically is a free-for-all. And India is a very sad case. India is being highly promoted on GMOs, and India suffers from suicides of farmers who've been forced to take GMO seeds, which have caused poor yields and has basically destroyed their individual economies and forced them to take their own lives when their crops fail to produce the minimum yields.
Well, let me give a quote that sort of backs you up completely on here by Colin Todd Hunter, who wrote a 2013 article called Genetically Engineered Terminator Seeds, Death and Destruction of Agriculture. Quote, previously, farmers just replanted their own seeds and exchanged them among themselves. As with forced enclosure of common land, in England hundreds of years ago, ordinary farmers today are being denied access to their heritage too, the common exchanging, saving, evolving, and breeding of seeds. By using various legal and political instruments through seed monopolies and seed patenting, big agribusiness has taken over the cotton seed market, especially in India, which you just mentioned, where over 90 to 95% of all cotton is now genetically modified and controlled by big corporations. Again, 90 to 95%. It is frequently argued that the high debt incurred by Indian farmers and resultant farmer suicides, over 250,000, Ken, since 1997, have largely resulted from the need to purchase costly pesticides and expensive seeds every year because they contain they think they contain a terminator gene. What is is there a truth to that about the terminator genes? It's true that Monsanto did experiment with them and has created them, but have they ever been actually put out there?
As far as I know, they haven't yet. Monsanto's original idea was to make these GMO plants sterile, so you had to come back to them to buy the seeds. But of course, the U.S. Supreme Court is not allowing farmers to reproduce or to, patented GMO seeds. They're forced to go back to Monsanto and the other distributors who own the patents on the seeds to purchase them and not create their own seed inventory. So I don't think it's out there, but the technology is there. And since there's no terminator seeds, there's another bad thing that's happening, and that's that GMO products are contaminating non-GMO products that are in neighboring fields. They're pollinating the non-GMO products and contaminating them. So,
oh my God.
Yeah, so they're terminating anyway. It's like the Terminator. It's like the Schwarzenegger of GMO.
They're terminating us. That's what you really mean, right?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah. Obviously, the major company we've been discussing is Monsanto in this discussion, and you're not alone in fearing the outreach of this company commercially and the effect it has already reaped in the world of agriculture. Do you feel like there should be some kind of prohibition on the kind of research that companies do in terms of creating things that are potentially toxic or dangerous on purpose, and then saying, okay, well, we won't use them now, we'll use them later?
Well, it's a great thing to say there should be a prohibition, but there's not even a prohibition. There's not even not legislation. There's not even enforcement in place on what was supposed to keep us safe. So they can basically do whatever they want to do, no matter what the laws are, because the enforcers are the companies themselves through the revolving door.
Wow. What we're going to do now is we're going to play an interesting little song called "Change" by the great songwriters Zabe Nathan and Bonnie Blazak. So, if you don't mind, let's go ahead and play the song called "Change." Change is about what we need to do in this world in order to actually affect something, even something as seemingly impossible as what we're talking about today, the GMO products. And it's just that it's time for a change. And so let's listen to this song.
In the midst of death, life persists. In the midst of untruth, truth persists. In the midst of darkness, light persists.
We need change. that makes life on Earth worth living. The kind that enables men and nations to grow and to hope, change, and build a better life for their children. We'll make change. Peace for all men and women. Peace in all time. We'll have change. But by design, I can hear the sound of hearts beating as one. It doesn't matter where we all come from. And when we join our hands across the sea, we will make a better world for you and me.
I'm just one human being. Out of 6 billion human beings, I'm one of them. Change. I believe that every human being wants happy life, successful life.
I can hear the sound of hearts beating as one. And it doesn't matter where we all come from. And when we join our hands across the sea, we will make a better world for you and me. You and me. I can hear the sound of hearts beating as one. And it doesn't matter where we all come from. And when we join our hands across the sea, we will make a better world for you and me. You and me. Change, 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 change. Change.
I've worked with Russian composer Edgar Ahrens for quite a few years, building an inventory of songs, many of which feature singer-performer Patricia Welch. We will soon be releasing these songs, components of an album and a musical in progress called Hadley's Castle. When Edgar and I first got together, I was amazed by the brilliance of his musical scores created for movies, TVs, and animations. Here is a sample of the work he did on the Russian TV series, available now on Amazon, called The Secret Agent's Memoir, which had 2 seasons. This score is called Escape and was created for the first season. I am very pleased to say that Bridge of Light Productions, a division of New Galaxy Enterprises, is proud to be the contact point for television and film companies seeking information about this amazing composer's work. If you're in the entertainment business and wish to know more, contact me at johnnybluestar@gmail.com. That's johnnybluestar@gmail.com.
Boots in Manhattan is a coming-of-age novel by Ray Boylan and Johnny Bluestar. It is about a young Tom Boots Raymond who grows up in New York in the 1940s who was a member of a street gang.
My friends and I were about to start our own game of stickball when Rabbit Lacey, the head of the Rattlers, came up to us and tried to move in on our game. We were called Dwarves, the youngest members of the stupid gang.
Hey, Kevin, I need you to get some gloves and some stuff I left at my place.
No, this is our game.
Hey, are you my good little dwarf or what?
You've been calling me a dwarf since I was 6. We're not your personal slaves, pal.
Hey, what is this? A dwarf rebellion? All right, big guy. We ditched the dwarf thing. We make you guys regular rattlers.
No, it's too late.
He looked at Jay and me. We looked away. Rabbit was now angry and he pushed Kevin hard with the palms of his hand. Kevin tried to ram him in the stomach, but he stepped aside, throwing Kevin into the curb where he fell to the ground, bleeding profusely at the knee. Still, he managed to get up.
My street.
Kevin shouted at Rabbit, pointing at him with an angry index finger.
Find out more by Googling Boots in Manhattan, a 1940s coming-of-age novel, part 1 of the novel series The Foot Soldier by Ray Boylan and Johnny Bluestar. Google with the words Boots in Manhattan, Ray Johnny Kindle. That's Boots in Manhattan, Ray Johnny Kindle.
You know, you've been talking about your book, but let's talk about your actual writing itself. What I know that you felt, like you explained, kind of desiring to become a writer for some time before you actually did. What was it like? I mean, what do you think? What was inside of you that produced this such a creative tension that you would actually step out of doing, being fully concentrated on the legal profession to produce these works?
I just felt I had a story inside me that needed to be told, and I feel like sometimes I'm the conduit for that, and just the ideas come and the story just pops out of me. It just comes out. So it's as natural as getting up in the morning and breathing.
You know, Leonard Cohen, in his speech, which he gave accepting an award in Spain, talks about how he's he feels like he's a steward of perhaps a higher power, whatever. He doesn't completely feel that it's totally him that's creating this. I wake up in the middle of the night and I get large segments of dialogue. I see things that are happening. It's not like I'm sitting down and saying, I'm going to write this particular thing. It just kind of flows from some other place. Is that your experience?
Yeah, I mean, I get in a point where I get stuck. And people always say, well, what do you do about writer's block? Well, what I do is I go away from the computer, I go outside, I take a walk with my dog, and in the fresh air, as I'm walking, it just comes to me. What I need for the scene just comes to me. So, yeah, I feel the same way.
Yeah, I mean, somebody said that a lot of a writer's work is not sitting down at a computer or a typewriter or whatever it used to be, but it's basically off the form of the actual writing. It's coming to you from. To me, it's a revelatory process, and I've had, because I work in different media, I've had lots of experience of different kinds of it, and it's truly amazing. And I can't give myself credit for a lot of it, unfortunately.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Well, what's next? What are you working on right now?
Actually, I just put a book to edit. It's the 6th book in the Brent Marks legal thriller series. It's called Absolute Intolerance, and it concerns Brent Marks as defending a gay couple for their right to be married, and a serial killer actually kills the gay couple, and Brent ends up defending the guy who is accused of killing them. So it's kind of convoluted, and where intolerance meets ethics.
Well, thank you so much for being with us today, and I want to thank everybody in Vegas All Net Radio for helping us, and particular thanks to John Stiles, Ryan, and Irma for their help, and for our board op, Mike Fox, who always comes through, and homage to the great Hassan Khan, who helps me with almost everything that we need to make this program actually come alive. And we want to also thank Patricia Welch and Edgar Ahrens for their music, and Stephanie Slevin. Thank you so much.
You, Johnny.
See ya.
Views and opinions expressed on this program were those of the hosts and guests and did not necessarily reflect those of Vegas All Net Radio, its affiliates, or its parent company.